All right, so today we have Joseph Gilbert on the show. Joseph Gilbert is a former Georgia Tech interior offensive lineman. I believe he played left guard. In high school, he was rated the number 46 prospect in Georgia by Scout.com. He was named to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's top 50 players in the state of Georgia. He was a Prep Star All-Region, honorable mention All-State for the Class 3A, two-time All-Bartow County. Um, he was a 2-year starter at Georgia Tech, starting 26 27 games. Both years, Tech was a top 5 rushing attack. He is a member of the 2009 ACC championship squad, and afterwards ended up transferring to the inaugural Georgia State team and was voted outstanding offensive lineman for Georgia State's inaugural team. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And it's fun going down memory lane right there. I'd forgotten some of that.
Yeah, doing a little research for the show. So you went to Cartersville High School, played for Frank Barden. Tell me about that.
I did. Well, Cartersville is a big football school, which was great. And I'll tell you right now, any middle schoolers out there watching this want to go to a D1 high or a D1 college, find a high school that has a good program because a lot of that comes from if you have a good football program, you automatically have eyes on it. And that's actually how I ended up at Tech.
Okay.
Cartersville, we made it to the semifinals of the state tournament in 2004, I want to say. And Joe Delisandris, the offensive line coach at Georgia Tech, was recruiting a senior on that team. And he just happened to see me playing. And from that is what got me on Tech's radar and eventually led to me getting a scholarship. So,
What class were you when you got knows? Were you a sophomore when he was recruiting the senior or a junior?
Yep, I was a sophomore when he was recruiting the senior, and no offense to Frank, but Frank Barden, he was a good coach, not great at communicating interest from different schools. So I actually didn't know Tech was interested until Coach D came up and called me out of Spanish class one morning. And
so you didn't learn from your high school coach. You learned from the person recruiting you from Tech. They were interested. And I think that's good to know because, we're talking about in Tech's nearest or recruiting class we just had people that are not rated properly. And I think that generally comes from people that are at high schools that are not generally powerhouses, so they don't have eyes on them, which I think is what you're speaking to.
Yep, that's a big part of it. And also, don't get too caught up in recruiting, rankings and all that, because in high school, yeah, you can tell a 5-star because they're the biggest, strongest, fastest people in the country. Yeah, it's easy to tell them. It's not easy to say, all right, this guy that's rated a 3-star, I see him developing into a starter. I see him developing into a contributor. And I tell you, there's a whole lot more 3-stars that evolve into 5-star talent through college than there are 5-stars that come into college as 5-stars and leave as 5-stars.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, the margin for error for a 5-star, which I think there's only 32 because they're all projected to be first round picks. So I mean, it's hard to live up to a first round billing. But tell me more about that. What was your experience like being recruited by Tech? Who else were you offered by? What did that look like?
Well, my recruiting was pretty great. I had a great experience. Joe D was the offensive line coach and a great recruiter. I really connected with him. And the thing about Tech, they really rolled out the red carpet for me. I'd had interest from other schools. I'd gone out to Athens for an unofficial. I went up to Nashville to Vanderbilt, and I'd been out to Auburn for a few. But the way recruiting works in these different schools, they'll invite maybe 100 people. They are interested in 15 of those for hard scholarships, and the rest they're fill-in talent.
Okay.
Hey, if we don't get the people we want, we'll pick who we get from this list of 85 other people. And that was very much the sense I got from definitely Vanderbilt and Georgia, and that it really rubbed me the wrong way. So I pretty much cut ties there. And when Georgia Tech came through and offered me and really rolled out the red carpet. I want to say I sat back and considered it for about a month and a half when I was a junior. And then I committed. I was actually the first commit in the 2007 class. I committed in
Wow.
like February. Yeah, it was ridiculously early looking back on it, but I was
Right.
really hyped for Georgia Tech, and I'm ultimately super happy with my decision. I mean, it would have been nice to play the recruiting game and go on a few other officials, but I ended up where I needed to be.
So did you grow up rooting for Georgia Tech, or did you were you predispositioned, I guess, to committing through fandom?
I really wish I could say that I was, but
Okay.
sadly, well, my dad was an Alabama fan, wasn't super passionate about it, so I ended up just being a sidewalk Georgia fan,
Hmm.
just for I was a dumb kid. Don't let's
Didn't know
not
any
hold me,
better.
yeah, let's not hold me too responsible for the decisions I made back then.
Right.
But I was a big Georgia fan, and like the thing about being a fan in middle school and or in high school and not being a recruit, you don't see the nuts and bolts of how it works and how you will fit in there.
Right.
So something that really caught my attention on that unofficial visit to Georgia, they had an academic presentation where a woman got up and said, "Hey, you know what? If you're struggling, work a little bit harder and get that F up to a D, or work just a little bit more and get that D up to a C." And I'm thinking, B's were the only thing acceptable in my house that wasn't an A. Like
Right.
my mother would have killed me if I brought home a D. So it was right around that time I was like, well, okay, this place doesn't align with me. And when I got to Tech, like a big part of the sales pitch was the academics and the networking, which is true. Back then the saying was one out of every six Tech graduates is a millionaire. And I really liked that idea. I liked going to college and getting a top shelf athletic experience, competing in the Power Five, but also having a great academic and professional future ahead of me after graduation. Because
For sure.
as everybody comes in, and I think everybody should come in. If you are a D1 recruit, it should be your goal to get to the NFL. That is the mindset you should be working in. But there's nothing saying that has to be your only aiming point.
Right.
If the NFL don't work out, work hard in your classes, get to know people, and you'll end up having a nice life that way. Which
Yeah, you should have a fallback plan no matter what your goals are, right? So I don't know what the percentage is. It's probably like a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a percent of NCAA athletes make the pros. So yeah. So walk me through. So what was it like signing? Like, what do you sign? What is this agreement? Like, I've always kind of wondered that. Like, you just sign something that commits to players. There's stipulations to it, or how does that work?
First off, it is a binding document. It's an official letter of intent, which I forget all the legalese ins and outs of it, but after you sign your letter of intent, that is the school you will be attending in fall. And if it is not the school if you decide to back out or whatever at the last minute, uh, you won't be playing. You won't be involved in athletics this
Mm,
next fall. Maybe you'll take a year off and somebody else can pick you up. But so far as signing, it's a very important thing. You don't see people change their minds after signing very often.
right.
But for the actual process, it was great. Like, uh, I got called out of class, and there was me and one or two other people at my high school that were going to go play. So we all had a little thing at the high school, and at the time, I forget who set it up. If it was I don't know if it was Collins or if it was just one of the recruiting or one of the other recruiting moms, but the ESPN zone in Buckhead had a whole setup for us, and there was an official Georgia Tech signing party where I want to say 22 out of the 25 signees all got to be there. So that was great. We got to be on ESPNU that day, and I got to meet more of the incoming class. It was awesome.
So, how involved was Collins in your recruiting, Jeff Collins?
For my recruitment, he wasn't all that involved, simply because I really had a good relationship with Coach D, and I committed pretty early, so there you don't have to hunt down what you already got.
Right.
But the thing I really liked about Collins, and well, the way he recruited at least, um, was he would find certain guys in the class. Like at the time, I believe Kyle Jackson, middle linebacker for us, he was. They nicknamed him the Ambassador because Kyle would go out and he would recruit these other guys to come to the team. So a lot of the talent from that '07 class was built by you get one guy in and have him on campus, make sure he knows what's cool about the school, and then he can tell the next guy what's cool about the school. So it goes from Kyle Jackson to Roddy Jones to Derek Morgan to Nick Clater, and all of a sudden you got yourself a hell of a class. And that, I think, is the and well, granted, you don't always do it because you don't always have an ambassador in your recruiting classes, but that methodology is really good because a coach comes in and tries to sell you on something. He might do a good job at it, but in the back of your mind, you always know I'm being sold something. This person has an ulterior motive. But if you're a 17, 18-year-old and another guy hits you up, hey, we're going down to Tech this Friday to walk around and see what's going on at the frats. You want to come? That sort of thing, getting people on campus and building camaraderie through recruiting, really can really turn into something special, which is what happened with that class of '07.
That was the top 10 class, right? That '07 was ranked 10th in the country, I believe.
Yep. And I'm gonna say it's partially because of me, but
yeah, no, it is. It is.
But I got no illusions about it. I was in awe of the different athletes that we had coming in that class. I mean, from top to bottom, you had DJ Donnelly, Morgan Burnett, Jason Peters. I'm trying to think.
Derek Morgan, right?
Morgan.
Was Michael Johnson in that class, or was he older?
He was not. Michael was 2 years older than us.
Okay.
But he was a freak. I did get to block him on scout team freshman year.
He was like a power forward that played defensive, and he was kind of lanky. I don't remember how tall he was. He looked like he was about 6'6" or 6'7".
Honestly, I think he was 6'9". He was absurdly tall. That's the first person I came to, and it's just, whoa.
Yeah, and you're not a short guy, right? I think you're 6'4", right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, tell us about transitioning. We talked about this on the live show from like high school level of play to college. And what that was like. I'm sure was it a shock? Like, wow, I knew it was more difficult, but this is absurd.
It's eye opening because one, as a freshman, you're coming in and you're dealing with the same college stuff that everyone else is. You're away from home. You got all the stress of class and everything else on you. But as far as football specifically, the pace of the game or the speed of the game is the biggest change. Because, I mean, granted, you're going up against guys that are bigger and stronger than what you've seen in high school, and that's a change. But the speed at which the defense moves, especially as an offensive lineman, if I'm going up to cut off backside linebacker, in high school, I'm just running straight up or I'm taking a little bit of a veer. But in college, if I'm cutting off backside linebacker who's lined up outside of me, I need to be sprinting to a spot about 3 to 4 yards ahead of the opposite guard. And if I just come out sprinting, I'll be there about the time that linebacker's coming across. And getting used to that speed, just knowing you're not blocking unless you're blocking a down lineman that's directly in front of you. You've got to be going to a point. You can't look at a man. You can't think, oh, he's right there, I'll know where he's going to be. You got to know where he's going to end up. And developing that, it took a solid year. Well, longer than that, to be honest with you. I was still kind of wide-eyed spring my freshman year, still picking things up. But once you get past the initial shock of it, the best thing to do is just put your head down and don't let the situation become bigger than you.
Right.
Yeah, because granted, it's going to be a transition. It's going to be hard, but if you apply yourself and you're hitting it daily, all of a sudden, sophomore year, you come around, it's not as fast as it was. I mean, it's still a fast game, but you are faster, and that was definitely that was the biggest change. And well, also redshirting. Redshirting's the worst. Don't
Oh
let
yeah, tell
everybody
me
tell
about
you.
redshirting.
Well, like everyone, pretty much everyone that comes into a D1 school or a Power Five school is big time at wherever their high school was, and that was true for me. And unless you are a John Dwyer or maybe a Josh
Nesbitt.
Nesbitt, yeah, you are going to be riding the bench, and you go from being the big man on campus to a blocking dummy, and that and it's a hard transition, man. Mentally, just working yourself back to okay, I'm low man now. I've got to work just like I did as a freshman in high school to start earning respect uh, and transitioning forward. So
I guess earning your stripes a little bit.
oh yeah, because the number ones they'll put you in your place real quick if you if you
Right.
start screwing around on scout team. Yeah, they'll let you know.
Walk us through, and we talked about this on the live show a little bit too, a day in the life of a college athlete. Because I don't think people understand just what the time commit is and the full commitment of being a Division I athlete.
Oh yeah, which it's huge. It's more than a full-time job. I'll tell you that, especially in season, because in season your day at Tech would start. Well, there for the first year Johnson was there. We had breakfast check, so we would have to wake up and be. Our dorms were on West Campus. We'd have to wake up and make our way to East Campus to eat at the athletics dining hall by 8 o'clock. And if you got an 8 o'clock class, you got to be there even earlier. So your day's starting early. At Tech, we had practices in the afternoon. So all of your classes are going to be between usually 9 and at latest, it'll end around 1:30. If I'm remembering right. Somebody correct me in the comments if my memory is getting fuzzy. But so you'll be in class all morning. Then you start meetings. You get half dressed before your meeting. You go in. You'll be in the meeting room for about 30, 40 minutes. Then you'll be out on the practice field. Practice is super regimented, but you will be there for ranging between an hour and 15 minutes on a light day to up pushing 2 hours on a long day. And after that, you go back, you get undressed, you go upstairs to the training table, get your get your treatment, get your dinner upstairs. Then you're hitting study hall for depending on. I know they made freshmen were required 24 hours a week, so normally you're going to log 3 or 4 hours of study hall at night, and then after all that, you can socialize for
For 30 minutes before
yeah,
bed.
I was about to, yeah, for about 30 minutes before you lay your head down to do it all again. And it's just jam packed, and don't get me wrong, it's a fun life. Like you do enjoy a lot of what you're doing, but it is that playing football prepared me more for a full-time job than I think anything else did, because you've got demands, what's expected of you, and it's a time commitment. You can't short it.
Right. I think on the live show, I think you had said it was about 30 hours a week, probably academics, and about 40 on the football side. So that's 70 hours a week you're committing between just being a student athlete. This isn't considering, like you said, socializing, going out having a good time or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Socializing was hard. I didn't do much of it Monday through Wednesday, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and how walk us through practice. So I know, I'm sure you have light days. You were talking about light days and heavy days. How was practice structured when you were there? And by the way, I don't think you didn't. Paul was there the whole time you were there, right? Gailey had been fired before.
Nope.
Okay.
Gailey recruited me, and then '07 was Gailey's final year. So that was when Taylor Bennett was quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and
A
Tashard.
congressman in Louisiana now, I believe. Taylor Bennett is.
Did he make it nice? I know he ran for some seat in Brookwood or in Brookhaven a while ago. Good on him. Taylor Bennett's a good guy.
So was Calvin Johnson on that team
He
in '06?
wasn't.
Okay,
Uh,
he had left in '06. That's right. He
yeah,
got drafted in '06. I think number 2 or 3
two.
overall.
I want to say he was number 2. Yeah, but I met him during recruiting, and granted, didn't get to talk with him too much. They'll shuffle recruits by the star is basically how
Right.
they did it. But
Yeah,
I
man.
remember shaking his hands, and man, I mean, I don't have small hands, but this man's hands were oven mitts compared to mine.
Yeah.
It was unreal. But I did meet him during recruiting, and I met Joanna Wahi once during recruiting, and I was pretty starstruck there. I was like, oh snap.
What does he go by now?
Roman Reigns is his stage name.
That's right. If you didn't know, yeah, current WWE champion Roman Reigns played at Georgia Tech.
Oh yeah, he was a bad man too. If it's still up on YouTube, you can look up the Joanne Wahi Brandon Cox hit. Because Brandon Cox was the quarterback for Auburn who made the mistake of throwing an interception. And this was back when you could light up a quarterback, and Joe got his money's worth off of that.
Yeah, it would be called targeting today, probably. But well,
Yeah.
and you're not allowed to really hit the quarterback today. We've learned, but
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well, I learned that after Tom Brady, the Falcons got flagged for tackling him. You
yeah.
tackle him too hard. Yeah, that's roughing now.
Well, it's roughing the passer, even though he wasn't a passer because he never threw the ball. But anyways, yeah, back to practice. Tell us about practice.
Oh yeah. So well, I guess that'll be the first comparison between Gailey and Johnson, because um, it was very different. The way Gailey ran practice, granted, I never played in the NFL, but I'd imagine it was very similar to what an NFL style practice is set up. We would, come out, do special teams, get a good run through. Then we'd go to individuals for about, I want to say we'd do individual for about 30 to 40 minutes. And, that's where you're doing your offensive line work. The receivers are doing their thing. And then we would come up and when we would do team and inside drill, they would do a period on and a period off. So the way it would work is a period is 5 minutes, and you'd be on. So I'd be running scout team offense for the defense. They'd run hard for 5 minutes, and then the next 5 minutes they go over to the barrels, go over what they saw, talk about corrections, and then back on. And it would go on and off like that for I want to say it was 2 periods of inside and 3 periods of team, and it was a grueling practice. Especially Coach D was brutal with some of his individual work, but it was very regimented, and I saw a lot of benefit from it, because one, you go over something, you're running a play. If something goes wrong, next when you're on the break period, you're going to get coached up and corrected. Like, okay, when that blitz comes up, you can't do it this way. You got to do it this way. Whatever the case may be, it allows for a lot of correction. Now, in comparison to that, we have the Johnson practice, which was a meat grinder. Like this, this thing beats you down. To be honest, well, Mondays we would start out with up downs for however many loafs that they decided we had, and
So this is
OA.
from breaking down film, right? You weren't going 100% on a play, and he's punishing you with up downs. Am I understanding
Oh
that?
no, yeah, this is from film from the previous week's game.
Right.
Yep. They would go through breakdown and see loafs, and I want to say for the first 3 weeks under Johnson, we had 100 plus up down to start the practice
Wow.
every day. It was brutal, but we'd do that. We'd break for individual. Individual wasn't as bad, but then the real punishing part came at inside drill, which would be 20 minutes of two huddle, offense. So you've got your ones and your twos. 1 runs a play, comes out 2 runs a play. And you would think that that would allow you more time to rest, but it doesn't. Two huddle will break you down, because if it's running one huddle runs, they come back, they regroup, call the next play, and you get back out there. And it takes maybe a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. Whereas with two huddle, the way it was coached to us, whenever the last play ends, the play is being called in the second huddle. So instead of getting rest, you're maybe getting 30 seconds in between each play, maybe.
Whew.
And yeah, and it's a lot. Like the way full contact goes in college, you will have some full contact, but a lot of places are concerned about injury and overworking players, and that was not a concern. So they
Right.
they worked us as much as they could. Did 20 minutes of inside, which is the worst part, and then you'd break for a minute, and then 20 minutes of team, and then I don't know if any other college team does this, but we would run wind sprints after practice. And
As not a punishment, just to do it.
no, that's just a standard end of practice. We're going to run some wind sprints, and like I don't want to big time it, but man, I felt like are we back in high school, man?
Right.
We just killed it for an hour and a half, and I'm dying over here, and we still need to run wind sprints, but it definitely
So-
instilled discipline.
Let me ask you this, because you talked about the amount of contact you had in practice. What percentage of the time would you say you were playing with some form of injury? And I'm not talking about an injury that took you out, you didn't play in the game. I just said, I got an ankle thing going on. I got, my wrist is sprained a little, but I'm playing through it.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, I think I got in halfway through the second quarter against Jacksonville State in '08, my first game. I got a vicious stinger in the back of my neck and couldn't move my neck for a little while.
Wow.
And that was my first injury. Luckily, they took me back, scanned me, and that was fine. And leading up to that was pretty much the only time I played without injury. Just because that whole first year in '08, I dealt with stingers, and the stingers themselves, you get used to them. They're unpleasant.
Right.
But
Describe a stinger to us for people who don't know what that is.
Oh, yeah. So basically what happens when you get a stinger is you're going to hit somebody and your neck gets jarred in one way or the other. So you're coming in for the hit, you knock them and your head gets knocked sideways, and it pinches some of the nerves and some of the vertebrae at the base of your neck. And at best, it's a burning pain that'll last, at best, 20 seconds to a minute, and then you can kind of shake it off. But for repeated stingers, the more you get them, the worse they are. And towards the end of the season, I would get if I got a hard stinger, it shoots all the way down whatever arm you're working with or whatever side of the body it is, and I wouldn't be able to lift my arm. Like there'd be times you can see me in the huddle in between plays just
Wow.
doing this, and that's trying to get the feeling back. And most times it worked, but there was a handful of plays I just played with one arm the whole time.
Did you miss any games? I think you might have missed one the time you were at Tech.
Let's see. The only game I came out medically was that first one against Jacksonville State. Because the big thing, I'm sure you know this about offensive line, you don't rotate. Now, if you bring yourself out, you stay out. And
Right.
And so for that reason, it probably wasn't the healthiest thing, but I never took myself out of a game, and it does weigh on you, like the slow compounding of different injuries.
Right.
But it's largely about like how bad do you really want this? And as long as you really want it that bad, you can flip a switch and just kind of push all the bumps and pain to the background and get the job done at hand. And that's what I'm really proud of myself on. And let's see. And actually, speaking about that, I know we were going to talk about the transition to Gailey. Do you want me to go ahead or
Yeah.
transition to Gailey to?
So you played a year under Gailey, and then you played under Paul, and started under Paul, and it sounds like the practices under Paul were pretty brutal when compared with Gailey. Maybe what was that transition like, and do you feel like you were adequately prepared given the toughness of the practice under Paul, or was it a little bit overkill, maybe, to prepare you?
Yeah. So talking about the transition, it was absolutely brutal. I don't think anybody on the team will tell you different. And to give you a little background, at the time that it happened, the way coaching transitions largely worked was whenever the new coach comes in, they want to free up scholarships. And we mentioned it a little bit on the call. They'll pull, the starting quarterback aside, or if you're an upper level senior, they'll pull you aside and say, hey, yeah, we're not going to use you. You should either head out or just expect that.
They
But
should transfer, in other words.
transfer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So some people get that, but the vast majority of the time, coaches will just make things unpleasant, make life as unpleasant as possible for the next first 1, 2, 3 years maybe. And the point of that is to drive off as many of the young guys as you can. And I understand that point from a practicality point of view. Like you're a new coach, your job depends on doing well. So you want to get as many of your preferred players in as you can. However, it is just a shit situation for the people that are there. And at the time, transfer did not mean you can enter the portal and go wherever you want.
You sat a year generally.
Yep. If you went D1 to D1, you had to sit out a year, or you could drop to FCS and play immediately.
You
But
could get a medical exemption in rare cases.
In rare cases, but well, the good go-to story I think of when Paul came in, obviously they cut all the tight ends, and majority of the tight ends that we had came in and played offensive line, but we had one guy named Colin Peak who was very good and did not want to transfer, or did not want to become a lineman, so he transferred to Alabama. And as I know it, Colin's parents were some of the best lawyers in Tampa. Like he was apparently very well known.
Jeff Collins?
No, Colin Peak.
Colin Peak. Oh,
Yeah.
this kid's parents were lawyers. Okay.
Yep. And when he transferred to Alabama, they appealed it to the NCAA for about 6 months to get him automatically eligible, and it didn't work. Like the NCAA just flatly told him no, and that is a highly valued transfer going to a football powerhouse.
Yeah.
With top shelf lawyers handling all of his cases, and he's not even able to get an exemption. So,
and this is something I've had an issue with, is like they also don't have to give a reason why they denied it. It's just yes or no, and no reason needs to be given.
Yep, that's exactly it. And the NCAA can deny it, and also coaches at the time. If you want to leave, but you're like at the time, Georgia Tech had a agreement in place that if you were to transfer out, you can't go to any ACC school and you can't go to Georgia. That was just a flat rule, and on top of that, the coach can add whatever restrictions they want.
Yeah.
So you have that system where it's not easy or efficient to transfer, but you still have a horrible life. So a lot of people in that situation, and I don't want to just say that this is about Tech. I've heard this whenever Curry left at State. I heard a lot of the guys didn't have a high opinion of the new coach. I've heard it from other friends who have gone to other colleges. Just if there's a transition, you are not going to be you're going to be put through a grinder, put through the mill, and life's going to be unpleasant. And some of the ways they do that, I mentioned sleep being at a premium because you're going to class and practice so much. Uh, One of the ways that life was bad was if you got an injury and you couldn't do sprints or something. Like my second year in '09, I hurt my knee against Clemson in the second or third game of the year, um, and it was really hard for me to do sprints. So I think the mindset behind this was to keep people from uh, claiming injury. But if you were injured and said you couldn't run, the only time you could do treatment was at 5:30 a.m.
Mm,
So yeah, so it's just a Faustian agreement where you can say, all right, do you want to take care of your body, or do you want to sleep a little more? And for me, the choice was always sleep. So I
yeah.
limped my way through the wind sprints, and I never took myself out of a drill. But it didn't need to be that way. It was
Right.
that way to make things unpleasant. And same thing with having kids move on campus. Um, because another thing we talked about on the other call, how as far as payment, you only get $15 per diem per game. You get a little extra money when you go bowl games, but a way that guys worked around that for a while was moving off campus. You get a couple of guys together, move into an apartment you can afford, and you have a and instead of your scholarship money going towards the dorms, you just get a check every month for board, for room, and usually you could make it work to where you had a little extra money after that.
Mm.
Well, it was a rule that everyone had to move back on campus
When
when
Paul took over. Okay.
Paul took over. So for that reason, yeah, you're not getting any money. All the potential money you could get is all going back to the school. And I mean, it's just a bunch of little cuts that
Right.
make life unpleasant.
So let me ask you this, because it's interesting. You're saying like Paul has the benefit of having a top 10 class his first year at Tech, and he puts you through a meat grinder to kind of filter out people that don't want to be there. Was this kind of, there's a word I'm avoiding trying to use, but was this applied fairly, or were there certain players that like we really need to free up the scholarship in this position, and maybe we really push that kid a little harder with this than others? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't recall anyone
Like
being.
being targeted.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody being targeted specifically in that way. Because if you really want somebody gone, that's when you pull them aside and you either have a conversation about a medical scholarship, or uh, potential or transferring out. That if it's that hard up of a situation,
Okay.
uh, yeah, they will just pull you to the side and get it over with that way. But funny you should mention about the top 10 recruiting class. Like starting in '08, when Johnson was there, outside of the big guys Dwyer and Nesbitt and a few others, the only thing I kept hearing was how much better we were going to be once Johnson's guys got there. Like, yeah, we are
Really?
doing, yeah. I
Okay.
remember I remember being told by so many fans and seeing it on little forums, like, yeah, things are going to be so much better once he has his players in. And like, one, that's just a horrible thing to hear. And I felt bad for a lot of the guys on the team.
We're crapping on you, kind of, right? Like once you're gone, things will be fine.
Yeah, like that was very much the mindset. Like whenever somebody screws up, oh yeah, that's Gilbert's out there getting flagged again. Can't wait till next year when we get somebody in here to replace him. And
Wow.
oh yeah,
That was said by who?
well, like specifically about replacing me, uh, my offensive line coach Mike Seawalk, who took over after Coach D. I think he thought of it as a motivational tool, but he just flatly told me, "Yeah, every year, I'm trying to find somebody better than you. Like
Wow.
I want to replace you." And if you just give like a little attaboy, just a little something that you're doing a good job, it can make a world of difference as opposed to you. I just had that beaten into my head, and I mean, after I remember getting off the plane after the Orange Bowl and thinking like, you know what, this this is the mountaintop, or this is pretty close to the mountaintop. Was it worth it? Like, was all the bullshit and the aches and the pains and all of that, what would it be worth it doing it again and coming up anything short of an ACC title and an Orange Bowl? And
What it?
for me, the answer was a defined no.
Okay. Okay.
Like,
No, fair enough. So you were recruited to play in a conventional offense with Gailey. I just want to, we'll change trajectories here. And you end up playing under the triple option, which has a very, I would think, particular way you have to play offensive line. Generally, I would think that guys are cutting weight a little bit more. You don't want them as heavy. You want them a little leaner and faster. How did you feel running the triple option? Were you irritated to run it? Did you like it? Did you have fun, or how was that?
Well, so far as fun, I did come to college. Really, I wanted to learn how to kick step and zone block. My main goals were to get a tech degree and prepare myself for the NFL, and that was really what I wanted to do. When the option came in, I think I it helped me so far as being a player and a contributor, because I ran a wing T offense in high school,
Okay.
and yeah, and a lot of the blocking scheme is, or at least the blocking rules for offensive linemen are very similar. So I had a leg up there on a lot of the guys. Um, as far as running the offense, I'm not going to lie to you and say it was a fun offense to run. It's a lot of throwing yourself on the ground, or the other side. There was always a big ask of uh, if you ever had a head up nose or an outside three, there were certain plays where the play scheme calls for you to base that man up. And I'm I'm there at the talking about weight. I tried to eat everything I could. I was only 285 pounds.
Okay. At
Eating,
guard.
and that's pizza and ice cream at night. That is 3 protein shakes a day.
You're trying to gain weight at 285. So and also show us like where is a three technique? Kind of run us through that real quick. What you just talked about,
Oh yeah. So
basing up someone who's lined up in a three.
yep. So three technique is the outside shoulder of the guard. So me being left guard primarily, it's a guy shaded outside your left shoulder. If a man is head up, that's a two.
Mhm.
Man's shaded inside of you towards the center, that's a two eye. And then you get down towards the center, you'll have a one shaded to either side, or a zero nose is just base up on the center. And then out on the tackle side, you'll either have a four eye playing inside the tackle shoulder, a five technique on the outside, or a wide nine, which is what your stand-up defensive ends will normally line up in, somewhere way far out. And to break down what you're seeing, normally if you're seeing a three, those defensive linemen can range from on the smaller, quicker side around 290 or so, all the way up to the big boys where you're getting a 360-pound guy. And believe it or not, yeah, manning up a 360-pound guy is not easy.
Yeah, just not getting pushed back. I mean, just holding your ground is difficult there, right?
Yep.
Let alone turning them and opening a hole or whatever.
And that's the thing. You can make good contact and maintain contact, but if your job is to move this man 3 feet back, sometimes you get that, but you're not going to get it all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue. We talked about it on the live show, but I want it for the interview too. I don't think that people appreciate just how difficult playing offensive line is. You can talk about the physical aspect of it. That is in and of itself is a huge ask. But also what you're talking about, identifying what technique he's in, All right. Then identifying what my job is, because depending on if he's in a 3 or whatever is going to determine what you need to do next. All right.
Yep.
Then we get into the situation. Now the D line shifts, or the linebacker moves out, and now your responsibility is shift. Kind of speak to that, and then I'm going to pull up a clip and have you walk us through it.
For sure. So yeah, as an offensive lineman, it's all about being a unit and communicating with the guys next to you and having familiarity there. So your center is going to run up and call out the defensive front. Normally, he's going to designate one linebacker as the Mike, or if it's a Will Sam situation, he'll designate whatever the offense is keying off of, and from there, the center makes his calls. If the guard or tackle has calls to make in the option, the tackle always had to make a call to determine how the outside linebacker was lined up, so that the quarterback could it would affect how the option would be run to whatever side.
Right.
And it's really a difficult machine to get going. You have to have guys that are familiar with each other, and that's the best thing is a unit that plays together for a year, for 2 years, for all of spring and all of fall camp. You want guys in there that know, if I'm running a double team, I'm going to be the post guy. The tackle's going to come down and clear him out, but I have to be looking at middle linebacker.
Right.
And
because you might have to come off and pick him up. You initiate the double team, but now I forget the word you use. You got to like shovel off and pick up backer.
Yep. And it's a bunch of stuff that you have to make a snap decision on, because like you said, if you got an outside shade that you're double teaming with the tackle, you're expecting to be the post man and you're looking for a linebacker coming down, but then they stunt and the 3 technique crosses your face, so you've got to redirect and take him, and all of a sudden, the tackle that thinks he's about to get a kill shot in on the 3 technique has to redirect up to linebacker. And
I didn't think about that being even more difficult with you being in the triple option, because 2 people you're not blocking generally, right? So generally it's the defensive end or a linebacker you're letting, and then most teams when they play a triple option will roll a safety down, and they're going to be the pitch. So if you get that wrong, and it happened from time to time, high turnover chance, someone's getting blown up. And what was that like when you missed a block going back with Paul waiting on the sidelines?
That was embarrassing more than anything else. I never worried about getting chewed out on the sideline, because you can't have that mindset when you're out on the field. You got to
playing scared of that.
Yeah. And well, the biggest thing, if you come in and you are worried about how you screwed up on the last play, you're not going to make a good play on the next one.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have a short mindset. But that being said, there were several times a stunting or either a twist or a slanting defensive lineman was an absolute nightmare, because in the triple option you have 60% of your weight on your hand, and you're in a sprinter stance. So you take 2 hard steps, and if all of a sudden that guy has just disappeared. There were a handful of plays where I just planed out, and you don't end up touching anybody because you had your whole blocking scheme is based off of having a point of contact to push against, and then all of a sudden, the worst one that I ever had, and probably the worst game I played in was Gardner Webb in 2008, and oh my God, credit to those people. They had a great plan for beating the triple option.
I think I remember that game. It ended up being fairly close. It was like a 1-score game at half, I believe.
Yep, it was a 1-score game at half, and I think we ended up winning because I think we won by like 3 points, because I remember the defense blocked a field goal that would have tied the game and sent it to overtime. And trust me, nobody wanted to see overtime in that game. That wasn't going to turn out well. And there were some extenuating circumstances. We had Josh Nesbitt and Jabo Shaw both went down. So we had Calvin Booker, who was a great guy, but he was a pro style quarterback back there trying to run an option scheme and
Getting hit in the mouth. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean,
It
that's
was
the other thing. Even the quarterback's got to be tough in the triple option because, I mean, you're getting hit at least probably every 3 plays you're taking a shot.
oh yeah, well, almost every play because I remember thinking like Nesbitt, that guy was a warrior because one he was not. Most people think of quarterback, they think of a flashy Joe Montana type. Uh, Josh Nesbitt, he had the soul of an offensive lineman because
He was tough.
Yeah, he was tough as nails. And I'm gonna remember the collision at the goal line against Clemson in the ACC title game. That man comes up and gets just whacked by a safety and a DB at the same time right at the goal line. He gets up, shakes it off. Hey, all right, back next play. And I was thinking a lesser man would have gotten knocked cold from that.
Were you on the field when we played Florida State? Fumbles, and then Josh Nesbitt rips it back.
Ball out. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that before or since from a quarterback or a position player. Has a position player ever ripped his own fumble back?
I've never seen it before because I didn't know it was a third down. I think that play happened, but in the rule book, if there are 2 changes of possession on a play, it is a fresh set of downs. So not only did Josh get the fumble back, it was 1st and 10 instead of being a turnover or
fourth down punt. Were you on the field for that?
Oh yeah.
So you come back and you're like, okay, it's first down. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it took a second to realize because I was backside on that, so I'm scoop blocking and originally I just thought it was a fumble. Like you just kind of see people running back, and when you see that happening, you know it's not anything good. But all of a sudden, I see Josh pop up with the ball, and okay, it's all right, first down. Okay, let's
go. So let's talk about that too. You know, players that you were close with. So I'm sure like I'm thinking of like Roddy Jones, Jonathan Dwyer, Josh Nesbitt. Bebe Thomas, right? These kids, and then all the offensive line. Tell us about the guys that you were in the trenches with.
Oh yeah, well, it was a great group of guys. Like probably 2 of the guys I was closest with were the offensive linemen that came in with me, Clyde Yandell and Nick Clater. Both 2 monstrous offensive linemen. We're definitely more pro style set than they were for the triple option, but they were both beasts and just good people. It was good to have 2 other offensive linemen I could come in and hang with. But other members of the recruiting class, pretty close with Roddy, which great guy. Love seeing him do his thing on the ACC network now.
He's killing it in the ACC network. Yeah.
Crushing it. It was funny. I actually met up with him at it was one of those kickoff things down at the Hall of Fame, and I'm talking with him, and all of a sudden this guy holding a clipboard walks up. He's like, "All right, sir, I found the talent. Roddy, we need you to come this way."
The talent.
The talent.
Bring the talent hither.
So that's when I knew. Oh, he's big time now. Okay.
Yeah.
But loved it. Really didn't have any issues with anybody in my recruiting class. I loved the whole group, and some guys you just meet and jive with off the field. Like Willie White was a receiver from Camden County, and he was one of the coolest dudes in the class. Like I love just
chill.
Just sit back and bullshit with Willie, and like some of the guys I played with on the offensive line, Andrew Gardner was probably the biggest name, and I was very much enamored with his playing style because he was a skinny guy coming out of high school, wasn't a 5-star prospect,
right?
But he had started for 2 years under Gailey while I was 1 year before I got there and 1 year while I was there. And he was so proficient in how he played, his technique and how he pass set. It was just a joy to watch, I guess would be the best way to say it. So he was fun. David Brown, another guy, who God bless him. David Brown came to Georgia Tech as I want to say he was a defensive tackle.
Mm.
And then before I got there, they had transitioned him to a tight end. And then when Johnson got there, they transitioned him over to an offensive tackle, and he started. I want to say all of '08. I think it was me and DB.
How do you make that transition? Like, playing all of those positions is difficult, let alone going from one to the other to the other.
Oh yeah.
He must be a heck of an athlete for sure.
Oh yeah. DB was a beast. Like I loved him, and I could tell why he played. He was recruited as a defensive line recruit because, man, if he locked on you and wanted to drive you, that man had leg strength. He could knock you back. But yeah, granted, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I was an offensive lineman, and if I couldn't play offensive line, just give me the medical because I'm not playing tight end.
No. Well, was there ever was there anyone that was maybe wound tight? Did you ever maybe miss a block and Nesbitt's like, hey man, come on now?
Never specifically on me because like the way the dynamic is, running backs, quarterbacks, all that, and granted each team's different, but the way Tech functioned, nobody gave the offensive line a whole bunch of grief. Like if you screwed up, they'll say, hey, get it right. Don't, you got to do this or that. But so far as chewing somebody out, that was not something that was done. Mostly because, don't.
Well, y'all had already ate so much shit from practice and everywhere else. Like, don't pile on, man. We're getting this done.
Exactly. I'm out here busting my ass so your name can get called. So don't when my name's called for something shitty, I don't need a running back coming down and barking at me. No,
So speaking of that, I'm gonna pull this clip up. Let me transition here to. So guys, you just watched part 1 of my interview with Joseph Gilbert. He is so awesome to do this with us, and I'm sure you guys enjoyed it, and I'm sure you've noticed something else. I just got in my RecTalk gear. These shirts, hats, and mugs are pretty fire. Guys, this merchandise is going to change your life. Like, women have just been surrounding me like, hey, you look so good in that shirt, I'd let you take me to Red Lobster. Like, it's going to change your life. But look out for part 2 of the interview to come out a week from today. I actually messed up the film breakdown, so we go into film breakdown, Joe's favorite games, bunch of cool stuff. But I didn't have my microphone set up when I switched to the view to break down film. But that's okay, because that's just another great excuse to get back in the studio with Joe Gilbert. So y'all look out for that. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you want any of this merch, there's a link in the description. And guys, if you hadn't liked the video, do that. It helps me out. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe. Thank you.